uploading it, there is a Dropbox. You don't need to take notes on this, obviously. There's a Dropbox, and put it in there, and one file. So one file when you do put it in the Dropbox. So if you're using photos, put them together, make it into a PDF, or do a Google Doc. If you just want to share the Google Doc, that's okay to share on email instead. Or you can do slides or something, or a Word doc. So just put them all together into one. The name of the file should be your name. So your name. So if it was the name of the file, just call it, if it's Lewis Risk, just call it Lewis Risk, for example. That's it. That's all you put as the name of the file. So hopefully that makes sense. And that is for after class on Thursday. You will do that. Now let's have a little look at some help. So for question 1, just a few hints and tips today, and then I'll answer any individual questions in a second. For question 1, you need to draw a sketch of all surfaces. So what I would expect to have is the sketch is labeled, so you can cut a wall number 1, and you have some sketch done out, drawn with a ruler, or drawn using an online device if you really must. On that sketch, then you have certain areas that you're not going to paint. So this is an imaginary diagram. So that's my air conditioning. So that I labeled the diagram. That's a window. That's a door. Okay. Also on a diagram, you should have in your dimensions. So that might be 2.89 meters if you're using meters, or you can use centimeters either. Make sure they're all in the same unit, because it would help you when you go to find areas. Either have them all in centimeters or all in meters, and try not to switch between the two. Just go with one. So if you've started one, probably most of you will use centimeters, and that's okay. So each dimension should be in here. Okay, this is 0.80 meters if you're using meters. So that's an example. Have all dimensions in, all lengths and widths. For the air conditioner, I was saying that you have to measure. So this is actually question 1 and question 2 kind of together. Take any measurements, so part 1 and part 2. For the air conditioner, you're not going to be able to reach up there. It's not possible. So you're going to have to give an estimation based off, maybe you can measure how wide you think the ground is below it. And then its height, you can compare it to a household item, and then you can measure it. So perhaps that is maybe 1.1 meters wide and maybe 0.3 meters high. So the way I'm putting all the dimensions on the diagram. Now you have to do at least 3 walls, and if your room has more than 3 walls, you have to do them all. But at least 3, and the ceiling if it has it, and do that for each one. So nice, clear diagram. So do have them separate. You don't need to draw 3. You can draw 3-dimensional, but it's not necessary. So you do wall 2 then, and it would look slightly different, because there's different things. It might just be an area for a window here and nothing else on this wall, and then you do the same thing here. You put in all your dimensions. You say wall 2, and then you do a 3rd wall minimum. Okay, so that's part 1 and part 2. You got to get out your measuring and put measurements on all these. So the door, you have to put the measurements on this window, etc. And that's part 1 and 2. Part 3 then is going to ask you to calculate the surface area. So this is part 3. That's part 1 and 2. I know it's a question, it's all the one. Part 3. Now, what I would recommend for part 3 to find the surface area, so the bits that need to be painted, I don't need to paint the bits I've highlighted here in yellow. These don't need to be painted because that's a door and a window. We don't paint windows over. Okay. So for part 3, what a good idea would be is to find out the area of the whole thing as if these things were to be painted, and then subtract these little areas. So we'll get the total area and then minus the little areas. And that could be a way to get the area of this. So do it as, and then label it as well, wall 1 area, wall 2 area, wall 3 area, wall 4 area, ceiling area, and then add them all up together to get a total surface area. So that would be my hint for part 3. Now, how to get, so this is only a practice, so I'm not grading it, but how, if you're doing the actual one, how would you approach the higher grades? Well, you would expect this diagram to be pretty much accurate, have all measurements, be very easy to read, labels, a key perhaps, and then it would link very easily to this calculations, and the calculations are laid out, make sense. Maybe you want to call this window number 1 when you're doing the little areas. Work out window number 1's area, and this down here would be window number 2 and stuff like that. So having it labeled clearly, so it's very easy to understand what area you're getting at any particular time. So this task is about communication and how you lay out your work, as well as the maths of it all, as well as getting an answer. So show all your calculations, lay out your work neatly, and so it all makes sense to me when I go and read it. Okay, so I'd imagine today you should get as far as finishing that. Finishing all diagrams, all measurements, and try and finish all surface areas today. For part 4 and 5, I'll help a little bit more on Thursday, but part 4 is once you have the area, you need to find out how many tins will cover. And for part 4, and I'll discuss this a little bit more on Thursday, part 4 you're going to have to think about conversion. So if you've used meters in this, you're going to have, that's fine, but if you use centimeters, you're going to have to convert your area into centimeters before you divide. And for part 5, I'll also discuss a little bit more on Friday, where you'll have to write a paragraph on accuracy, which I will discuss more on Friday. If you're at this stage, if you finish part 1, 2, and 3, and you want to get on part 4 and 5 today, you can, and then perhaps you can adjust your answers on Thursday when I go through those in more detail. But that's my hints and tips for part 1, 2, and 3. Lay out your work neatly. If you're doing it on a piece of paper, lay it out neatly, and you can take photographs of it later. If you're doing it online, that's fine. Just make sure it's in one document. All right, now I'll take some individual questions, and then I'll let you all go at once. So anybody got a question, you can put up your hand, or you can type it in the chat.
Mr. Collins?
Yes.
I'm at Yuke's house right now, so can I just work on his room?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so a few people I would like to go with Miss Vivian. So can, if I don't call out your name, you're now free to leave. Olivia, Aiken, you guys can hang on for a minute. Also, if you want to go to Miss Williams' chat, you can, or you can come back in here and ask me further questions. Charlie, you have a question?